It is just gone 8 o'clock Central Africa time here at Eswatini TV. Welcome to the news bulletin at 8, brought to you by Eswatini TV. My name is Sunny Boy Ngwana. Thank you so much for tuning in and compliments of the new year. We are coming to you live from our Hospital Hill studios in Babane. Here's a quick look at news making headlines this evening. His Majesty King Mswati III has led the nation in dance during the burning of the log. His Majesty has commanded government to accelerate efforts to bring the COVID-19 vaccine into the country. The Minister for Health has condemned people who fraudulently obtain COVID-19 certificates. Now the news in detail. His Majesty King Mswati III and Her Majesty the Queen Mother led regiments in dancing during the burning of the log at Eswatini residence. Now the ceremony continued under the COVID-19 regulations.
Today,
The rains that rained heavily after lunch did not stop the nation from coming together and take part in this important cultural event. His Majesty King Mswati III and Her Majesty the Ndlovukazi led eMswati in dancing at Eswatini residence during the burning of the log. Laqwebetelago, Luthango, and Medians, clearly dressed in their traditional attires, danced in harmony in the royal crawl. The number of regiments was reduced significantly to show their Majesty's compliance with the COVID-19 regulations. Dancing inside the crawl also continued under the COVID-19 regulations, which include sanitizing, wearing of masks, and social distancing. This day follows the main day of Ingwala, which was on Saturday. The whole ceremony started with the dancing of the Liti Ingwala, which commenced a few weeks back at Eswatini residence, whereby their Majesties led regiments in dancing. His Majesty then proceeded to Engabezweni residence, then Mpumalanga, and lastly Buhleni residence, while Her Majesty continued to lead regiments at Eswatini residence. His Majesty then commissioned Ingacha to go pick Lusegwane. Also present during the burning of the log were the Makosigati to His Majesty, the royal family, the acting Prime Minister, cabinet ministers, and chiefs. After dancing on this colorful and beautiful day, Indvuna Komendanyani Makakula then communicated an order from His Majesty to Laqwebetelago. Laqwebetelago are expected to come out in their numbers to weed the Royal field, and they are expected to weed until His Majesties disperse them. On the news, I am Polile Mazia with Tabiso Dlamini at Lutitini Royal Residence.
His Majesty King Mswati III has expressed his concerns over the havoc being caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, His Majesty has commanded government to upscale the use of the 200 million emalangeni to get the COVID-19 vaccine and make it available for all eMaswati. Now, the acting Prime Minister Themba Masuku delivered the King's command during a press conference that was held at the Cabinet offices today.
Today I have been commanded by His Majesty King Mswati III to express his concern about the havoc currently being wreaked by COVID-19 on this nation and the world at large. Following the 200 million emalangeni COVID vaccine budget that he commanded me to announce to the nation yesterday, His Majesty has further commanded that I emphasize the following. First, that when the vaccine arrives, he requests eMaswati to cooperate with the Ministry of Health so that we can all be protected as a nation. Number two, that his government continues to upscale the COVID-19 response so that we do not lose more lives even though the vaccine is not yet available in the country. And three, that all eMaswati and residents of this kingdom should continue to religiously adhere to all non-pharmaceutical protocols to prevent the spread of COVID-19, which are appropriately wearing a mask at all times, regularly washing hands with soap and running water or a hand sanitizer, keeping social distancing, and avoiding unnecessary travel. His Majesty has also commanded me to express his gratitude to health workers and all frontline workers who have dedicated themselves to helping eMaswati fight the scourge and save lives. Baeti wenwa phakathi.
The Minister for Health, Lizinkosi, has profusely apologized to families who lost their loved ones to COVID-19 pandemic and were moved from pillar to post while trying to get assistance to take their remains to the morgue. Now, the minister made this apology following that a Shabalala family from Two Sticks in Manzini was forced to keep a COVID-19 corpse in the house for hours while trying to find assistance to take the deceased to the morgue.
The Minister of Health, Lizinkosi, says the Ministry of Health will communicate with burial companies in the country in assisting them with taking corpses of people who have lost their lives while still recovering from COVID-19 at home.
Kufuna ukuthi kuthathwe itaba thide sakufundzisa ke veni ukuthi labo lekufuna babambe lesidumbu kufuna bende njani.
She says those families who have lost someone due to COVID-19 should handle the matter with care and isolate the body, ensuring no one is in contact with that particular person who has passed on, while also reaching out to those responsible and are well trained to handle this situation, such as the emergency medical services or burial homes. Families should remain patient until they find response.
Loba mnengi lapho nimgcebe nje kahle nimbonye nimbekele ukuthi nabefika la batawufika bamthatha.
The ministry urges eMaswati to be patient during this period of COVID-19, especially with the second wave situation, as they continue to strengthen different sectors in response to the situation. For Eswatini TV News, I'm Temalang in Dlamini in Babane.
The Ministry of Health says they have discovered that some people alter the date on their COVID-19 certificates to make them seem current with the aim to cross local borders. Now, the minister says some health facilities provide COVID-19 testing services to unsuspecting public, knowing very well that they do not have accreditation to do so. Now, she says these people are later nabbed at the border.
Bayaganga ngilokuthi nje njalo noma ngikuphi ingqondo yemuntu ngetwayithini bese bafuna indlela letinye tokukwenda.
This is how Minister of Health Lizinkosi described those who cook fraudulent COVID-19 certificates, indicating that people are free from the virus. Such results are often used by those who want to visit neighboring South Africa, and Minister Nkosi says they have discovered how those people and organizations operate.
Labanye basa certificate dabo letinzala kuthi nje ngabe wa testa ngaJune so yabuka ukuthi hey ungagucula njani lapha ukuthi bese ba type over lama dates bese bayabanjwa ke bayabuya bayaganga abantu siyakhutha sivene siyacela sive ukuthi na ufuna kuhamba hamba uyobhadala lapho kufuna ubhadale khona.
The minister says government will continue to write to those who are found to be misleading the public by giving it fraudulent COVID-19 certificates. She says authentic COVID-19 testing can only be done by government, Lancet and AMPAD. The source of the fraudulent results is being investigated by police, whose Chief Information and Communications Officer, Superintendent Pindile Vilagati, says they are dealing with the matter.
Siyaqhubeka vele nekuthola abantu labeta netifiketi mbumbulu bafune ukuphumela egedeni noma baphumele emaveni abomakhelwane laba suke labanenge bakhona bakholelwa ukuthi tikahle labanye ke vele ubone ukuthi kukhona kuganga lokukhona singemaphoyisa ke solo siyaqhubeka nekuyilandzelela lenzaba vele siyathembisa ukuthi kukhona labantu awugcine badiphendulela vele ngalendzaba le njengaloku luphenyo solo lichubeke njalo.
In December, Mpumalanga Province, South Africa authorities complained of a Maswati being nabbed at the Oshuk border with fraudulent COVID-19 clearance certificates. They said 15 people had been caught with these certificates in that month, most of whom were from Eswatini. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela, Mbabane.
The Chief Police Information and Communications Officer Pindile Vilagati says woe unto those who still fail to adhere to the COVID-19 regulations, which includes wearing of face masks in public and playing football. Now, this follows the ongoing sporting activities across the kingdom despite being banned, except for the Premier League games.
Under the new COVID regulations, it is clearly stated that it is a must to wear a face mask in public. Failure to do so, one faces a fine of 100 malangeni. Some people, however, still do not adhere to that. At the Manzini bus rank, those who did so were quickly dealt with by police officers who were quick to respond after a tip-off by concerned citizens at the bus rank. Some sporting activities like football remain prohibited as well, but some still gather at stadiums to play soccer despite the regulations. In the new regulations, they face a fine of a maximum of 25,000 malangeni. The Chief Police Information and Communications Officer, Superintendent Pindile Vilagati, says failure to adhere to the regulations will result in serious consequences.
The regulations include, amongst others, the wearing of mask. That still remains a mask in the country, and we expect people to comply. For an individual who fails to wear a face mask, they'll be paying a fine of 100 malangeni. And there is a possibility that we can end up taking those people to court if we see that compliance is not there at all. And for public motor vehicle drivers or conductors, it is expected of them to be responsible by providing the sanitizers in their transport, and as well as making sure that the clients are wearing their mask. If they fail, the driver or the owner of that vehicle is liable, or even if he doesn't wear the mask himself, he's liable and may pay a fine that is 800 malangeni. So we appeal to the nation to make sure that they comply.
Members of the public can dial the number 122 or 999 to report COVID offenders. Those using public transport are expected to adhere to the regulations as well, where the driver of that Transport will be fined 800 malangeni if found to have allowed customers to be aboard a public transport vehicle without a face mask. Swimming also remained banned according to the COVID regulations. I am Kian MCB for Eswatini TV News, Manzini.
The director of the National Association of Persons with Visual Impairments, Mandla Metula, says it is important for the blind community to be educated on how to use Braille. Metula was speaking on the importance of the World Braille Day, which is annually commemorated on the 4th of January.
Every year, countries around the world, including the Kingdom of Eswatini, commemorate the World Braille Day, whereby awareness is raised on issues affecting blind and visually impaired people. The director of the National Association of Persons with Visual Impairments in Eswatini, Mandla Metula, says the use of Braille is an important way of communication for blind and partially impaired people.
Braille, an essential means of communicating towards persons with visual impairment.
This year's theme is Braille, an essential means of communicating. For the blind and visually impaired to communicate well, Braille is needed. We have seen it here in the kingdom. 50 years ago, people were taught how to use Braille, and it is important in academic achievements and employment, amongst other things.
Umuntu ongaboni ukhona kungena noma ngisebenzisa i-computer kodwa le computer iphinze ibe ne-embosser le converter le print into Braille format lokuyindlela lelula kulomuntu ongaboni ukuthi akhone kufunza akhone kuthola umlayeto akhone kuba nelwazi lokuthi kuqhubekani emhlabeni.
The United Nations says Braille is essential in all countries around the world in a lot of sectors such as education, social inclusion, amongst others. The United Nations says Braille is a right that should be given to all. Reporting, I'm Temalangin Dlamini with Mizum Konda, Babane.
The state looks ready to prosecute Nomvuyo Sibongile, who was arrested for the alleged murder of her 5-month-old baby. Nomvuyo is suspected to have committed the crime by tying a belt around the baby's neck at Tsawela area. Now, the Crown says it will parade 8 witnesses in the matter. Timiko Mavimbela reports.
One of the witnesses in the matter is Ngosingphile Mawelela, who will tell the court that she found the baby tied with a belt around the neck. The Crown says the witness will tell the court that she came across Nomvuyo Sibongile Lukele and asked her to accompany her to the shops. Mawelela will tell the court that she asked the accused where her baby was and she said it was sleeping. She will tell the court that she went into the house to look for the child and found it tied with a belt around the neck, laying on a bed facing upwards. Mawelela will tell the court that Nomvuyo laughed and said the baby was playing with the belt when asked why the baby was tied. She will also say that she tried to wake the baby up, but it did not respond, and that was when she called Zandile Kininza and Toby Letwala, who called the police. Zandile, another witness in the matter, will tell the court that she asked Nomvuyo what she did to the child. She will also narrate to the court that the accused said she strangled it because it was crying. Another witness will be Dr. Koma Reddy, a police pathologist. Dr. Reddy will testify to the court about what he found when conducting a post-mortem on the deceased body. Dr. Reddy will tell the court that he found ligature marks that occurred before the death, which were around the middle portion of the neck. The pathologist will also tell the court that the child's brain was congested. He will further say that there was bruising on the tongue. Prosecuting counsel in the matter is Macebo Numalo. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosi Mavimbela, Babane.
5 men have appeared in the Babane Magistrates Court for theft. One of them is a 37-year-old Mtutuzi Malinzisa of Ezwatini, who was arrested for stealing chocolates, sweets and peanuts at ShopRite. Malinzisa has told the court that he did this because he had promised to buy his girlfriend some goodies.
What was meant to be a romantic gesture for 37-year-old Ngosingphile Malinzisa saw him ending up in court. Malinzisa, who is a resident of Eswatini, appeared in court for shoplifting at ShopRite on New Year's Eve. Malinzisa stole Simba salted peanuts, peppermint, smooth milk chocolate, and a Kit Kat. The total value of these items is 105 emalangeni. The court asked Malinzisa why he stole these items and whether he had a sweet tooth. In response, Malinzisa said he had promised his girlfriend that he would buy her goodies. Malinzisa said when he got to the store, he discovered that his money was only enough for transport back home, and that is why he ended up shoplifting. The court found him guilty and sentenced him to 5 months imprisonment with an option of 500 emalangeni fine. The court also warned Malinzisa to refrain from stealing but have money so he can buy whatever he wants. Others who appeared at the Mbabane Magistrates Court for theft charges today were Eduardo Nobunga, Mandlengosi Shabangu and Moses Sitole. The trio stole 6 wire mesh valued at 2,700 emalangeni from Ngwenya Peterson Company. The trio told the court that there are security guards at the company. They said they stole from the company because their employer did not pay them in time and they had children to feed. The court warned them never to bite the hand that fed them. They told the court that they have since lost employment. The court then sentenced them to 1 year imprisonment with an option of a fine of 1,000 emalangeni each. Also making an appearance was Sifiso Katafi Dladla, who stole a brush cutter at Sandla. He was found guilty and sentenced to a year in prison with an option of a fine of 2,000 emalangeni. These matters were before Magistrate Sifiso Vilagati. For Eswatini TV News, Temgosima Vimbela, Mbabane Magistrates Court.
Welcome back. Now let's look at news making headlines in sports. Athletics Association of Eswatini has cancelled its January activities, mainly the track and field events and training sessions for its officials. Now the association's Secretary General Toba Mazibugo says the cancellation is based on the ongoing coronavirus pandemic that is still on the rise in the country.
Athletic Association of Eswatini had scheduled to host track and fields and training for the association's officials this January. The association's Secretary General Toba Mazibugo says the cancellation of the above activities is based on the ongoing coronavirus pandemic that seemingly is on the rise in the Kingdom of Eswatini.
We had scheduled a number of events in January that we were looking to have track and fields as well as training for technical officials and coaches. But as it stands now, it looks like those activities we will not be able to go ahead with them. As for the causes, we will do our best to conduct them virtually. These are courses that we normally have in the beginning of the year to prepare our technical officials and coaches.
However, Mazibugo highlighted that national athletes who are preparing for the Olympic Games qualifiers continue with their preparations. He concluded saying that they will be updating the nation to when they are planning to resume their activities. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Msonera, Mbabane.
Chairman of the Referees Association, Sipho Gunene, says referees' allowances has been increased by over 100 emalangeni since the beginning of the new season. Gunene is applauding the National Football Association, who played a key role in seeing that the increase is taking place. Now, Gunene was speaking to Eswatini Sports in Mbabane.
In November last year, the Referees Association held their annual general meeting where the topical issue was of the referees' salaries that needed an increase per game. The associations promised the referees that further discussions were to take place with the National Football Association in seeing that taking. The chairman of the association, Spogunene, says referees have now since received an increase of over 100 emalangeni. Kunene says previously they were getting about 240 emalangeni, but now they'll be receiving 350 per game. Kunene went on to highlight that as an association, they are looking to increase the number of credited FIFA referees. He says currently they are standing on 12 referees with 4 female and 8 males, but there should be an increase in the upcoming years. Kunene concluded urging local referees to keep on updating themselves on different new rules and regulations of the football game. For Eswatini TV Sports, Fabrice Msonera, Babane.
Now, Eswatini, that brings us to the end of our news bulletin at 8 here at Eswatini TV. Here's a quick recap of news making headlines this evening. His Majesty King Mswati III has led the nation in dance during the burning of the log. His Majesty has commanded government to accelerate efforts to bring the COVID-19 vaccine into the country. The Minister for Health has condemned people who fraudulently obtain COVID-19 certificates. Well, Eswatini, that brings us to the end of our news bulletin at 8 here at Eswatini TV. We shall cross over to the Weather Center for a detailed weather report. From us and the rest of the transmission team here at Eswatini TV, it's good night and God bless.